Welcome to a world with limitless possibilities. A world where pain and suffering are matched only by the sounds of those who endure it. Welcome to your nightmare.
Welcome to your nightmare.
There's a thin line between the world we see and the things that wait for us when the lights go out. Welcome back to Nightmare. Sit back, lock your doors, and check the shadows. Tonight's story begins now. Most urban legends are just stories told around campfires to make children cover their eyes. They have a monster, a moral, and a clean ending. But then there are rituals, the games you play with reality itself. Tonight I'm telling you about the time I played the elevator game. It started on obscure internet forums, a set of instructions whispered across the dark corners of the web. It demands a building at least 10 stories high, a working elevator, and a total absence of other human life. You step inside and you press the buttons in a precise, mathematical sequence. You aren't just changing floors. You're entering a combination lock into the fabric of our world. The believers say the sequence is a formula. If you take the floors 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5, and multiply them by the sequence steps, adding the final plunge to the lobby, the math unlocks something ancient. The sum of the equation always equals 666, the number of the beast, a spiritual coordinate system for hell. I was a lore collector, someone who tracked down modern folklore for a living. I didn't want to debunk the elevator game. I just wanted to see if the atmosphere lived up to the hype. At 2:45 a.m., inside a desolate, brutalist apartment tower downtown, I stepped into the dimly lit elevator car. The door slid shut, sealing me in. I took a breath and began the ritual. Floor 4. The elevator groaned, rising with a heavy, pressurized sigh. When the doors opened, the hallway outside was empty, bathed in a sickening, flickering yellow fluorescent light. I felt a sudden weight drop into my stomach. It was the air. It felt thick, stale, like air that hadn't been breathed in 50 years. I felt an overwhelming urge to step out, just to see if the hallway was real. But the rules of the legend are strict. No matter what you see, do not leave the car until the ritual is complete. I stayed inside and pressed the next button. Floor 2. The elevator descended. When the doors opened on the second floor, the lights in the hallway were completely out. But I wasn't alone. Standing at the very end of the corridor, facing away from me, was a figure. A man in a dark suit. He didn't move. But as seconds ticked by, I realized I could hear him whispering. Even from 30 feet away, his voice sounded like it was right inside my ear. Repeating my name, John, over and over again in a frantic, rising panic. I slammed the button for the next floor, my fingers trembling. Floor 6. This time, the doors opened to complete silence. The hallway was gone. In its place was a wall of solid, unyielding concrete, just inches from the elevator threshold. The elevator had stopped between floors, or worse, the building had changed shape. If I had tried to step out, I would have fallen down a bottomless, pitch-black shaft. The legend warns that floor 6 is where the elevator tries to trick your perception. I kept my eyes on the panel and pressed the next sequence. Floor 2 again. The elevator dropped back down. The man in the dark suit was gone. But the hallway was different now. The walls were covered in thousands of old, faded photographs of people. As I looked closer, I realized they were photos of people looking out from the inside of this exact elevator, their faces frozen in pure terror. I recognized one of them, a missing blogger who had vanished 3 years ago after posting about this exact game. The elevator was keeping track of us. Floor 10. The elevator didn't just rise. It shot upward with a sickening velocity that forced me to my knees. The metal walls shrieked. When it finally slammed to a halt on the 10th floor, the doors didn't open. Instead, a heavy rhythmic thumping began on the roof of the elevator car. Something was up there, walking around, trying to find a way in. A voice, wet and distorted, echoed through the ventilation grate above me.
You forgot to say goodbye.
I gripped the handrail, tears streaming down my face, and jammed the final button in the sequence. Floor 5. The elevator slows to a terrifyingly smooth, quiet stop. A soft, crystal clear ding. This is the climax of the legend. The doors open onto a hallway that looked exactly like the lobby of the building, bathed in a warm, inviting morning light. And there, standing by the glass entrance doors, was a woman. She looked kind, familiar, like an old friend I hadn't seen in years. She waved at me, smiling broadly. "Come out, John, you made it. The game is over." My heart soared. I took a step toward the doors, but then I caught my reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. In the mirror, the woman by the door didn't have a face. It was just a smooth, blank slate of flesh, her hand waving rigidly back and forth like a mechanical doll. The legend explicitly warns, on the 5th floor, a woman will enter or tempt you to leave. Do not look at her. Do not speak to her. If you do, she will take you to her world, and you will never return. I choked back a sob, looked straight at the floor, and smashed the button to the 1st floor. The entity's polite facade shattered. A screech that sounded like tearing metal echoed down the hallway as the woman charged towards the closing doors. The elevator plummeted, dropping so fast my feet left the floor for a terrifying second. The numbers on the digital display spun backward into a blur. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The door slid open. The real lobby. The real morning sun. I sprinted out of the building, collapsing onto the sidewalk, drawing in lungfuls of cold, fresh air. I had survived. I had played the urban legend and won. But for those who study the lore, know the darkest rule of the elevator game. The rule they only post on the deepest threads. The math doesn't lie. The equation of those floors always totals 666. Because you aren't playing a game to escape. You're signing a lease. Sometimes the elevator doesn't take you back to your world. It takes you to one that belongs to the countersum. I walked home and unlocked my apartment. But when I turned on my TV, the news anchors were speaking a language I couldn't understand. When I looked in the mirror, my eyes were just slightly the wrong color. And when I checked my phone, there were no contacts, no messages, no one. I was home, but I was entirely alone. Be careful which buttons you press, listeners. You might just get exactly where you're going. I do love a good ritual story, so we're going to continue that theme with our next one. This story is called The Window of the Red Veil. The internet has an endless supply of rituals. The Elevator Game, The Midnight Man, Three Kings. They all promise a glimpse into the supernatural if you follow their arbitrary mathematical little rules. Turn off the lights, light a candle, knock on a door. They feel like childhood games because they give you a boundary. They promise that if you keep your feet inside the chalk circle, the thing in the dark can't touch you. But there are other rituals, older ones, the ones that didn't originate on a creepy message board, but were found scratched into the mortar of cellar walls or buried in the journals of asymmetric lunatics. These rituals don't care about rules. They don't have a safe escape clause. They are designed with a singular, terrible purpose: to strip away all physical illusions of our reality, regardless of the violent cost to the flesh. I know, because 6 months ago, I found one. It didn't have a catchy name. In the leather-bound ledger I found in an abandoned sanitarium basement near the Indiana border, it was simply titled, "The Window of the Red Veil." The ledger belonged to a surgeon from the late 19th century, a man who became obsessed with the physical location of the human consciousness. He wrote that our eyes don't actually see the universe as it truly is. They act as filters, doling down a violent, screaming cosmic architecture so our fragile brains don't liquefy from the sheer terror of it. He claimed that if you temporarily short-circuit the ocular nerves using a specific chemical and psychological process, you can bypass the filter. You can see the unseen. The instructions required absolute isolation: a dark room, a copper mirror, a glass of salted water, and 3 drops of pure silver nitrate solution applied directly to the retinas. The ledger explicitly warned, "The sight is not a passive theater. To look upon them is to invite them to carve away the veil that keeps you hidden from their teeth. The outcome is always bloody. The outcome is always absolute." I was a skeptic. I was a podcast producer looking for a dark story to tell, something visceral to talk about on my late-night episodes. I thought it was a metaphorical text, a theatrical piece of psychological horror written by an eccentric doctor who had spent too much time in the ether. So, on a bleak Thursday night at 3 a.m., I sat in my bathroom, alone. The setup was exactly as prescribed. A single candle flickered behind a heavy copper plate I'd sourced from an antique shop. The reflection was distorted, turning my face into a elongated metallic smear in the orange light. Beside it sat the glass of brine, and in my right hand, a small blue copper dropper filled with a chemical solution. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a dull, thumping ache. I stared at my reflection. "It's just a trick of the light," I whispered to myself. "Sensory deprivation, a mild chemical irritation, that's all." I leaned my head back. I opened my left eye wide, brought the dropper down, and let the first cold bead fall. The pain was instant. It wasn't a dull burn. It was a white-hot needle piercing straight to the back of my skull. My eye clamped shut involuntarily, tears streaming down my cheek, thick and hot. I gasped for air. The copper smell of the candle suddenly turned rancid, smelling faintly of old pennies and scorched skin. I forced myself to open my right eye. I squeezed the dropper again. Drop 2. The second wave of pain nearly made me vomit. The bathroom around me began to warp. The edges of the mirror didn't look like copper anymore. They seemed to be vibrating, humming at a frequency that made my teeth ache. I gripped the edge of the porcelain sink, my knuckles turning white. Total darkness. The candle had gone out, but I didn't blow it out. The air pressure in the room had plummeted so violently, my ears popped with a wet, sickening click. The pain in my eyes suddenly vanished, replaced by an unnatural, freezing numbness. I blinked, and that's when the veil tore. I wasn't looking at my bathroom anymore. The walls weren't drywall and tile. Through the silver nitrate haze, the room appeared to be constructed out of tightly packed, dark purple muscle tissue, pulsing with a slow rhythmic contraction. The sink beneath my hands felt wet, warm, and slightly fibrous. I looked into the copper mirror. My reflection wasn't there. Instead, the mirror was a literal window. Through the glass, I could see a vast, infinite hallway that stretched out for what looked like miles. The architecture was terrifying, towering pillars made of fused bone, and a ceiling that looked like an ocean of black, viscous oil churning in slow motion. And standing in that hallway, just 3 feet on the other side of the glass, was a figure. It didn't have a face. Its head was an elongated, pale oblong of raw, uncovered muscle fibers, glistening as if it had been just flayed. It didn't have eyes, but it stared directly into my soul. But it was staring directly into my soul. It wore a long, tattered smock, made of a thick, dried leather, and its hands were tipped with long, surgical steel instruments that grew directly out of its finger bones. The creature was holding a long, rusted iron needle, threaded with thick, black cord. The surgeon's ledger had warned me. They are the tailors of the veil. They mend the thin fabric between the meat and the shadow. When they find an open window, they do not close it. They sew the watcher into the frame. The creature took a step toward the glass. Its steel fingers scraped against the other side of the copper mirror with a high-pitched, agonizing shriek. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my throat. My vocal cords felt heavy, filled with a thick, metallic fluid. I tried to pull my hands away from the sink, but the pulsing, muscular walls of the room had begun to secrete a dark, sticky resin that glued my palms firmly to the vanity. The thing in the mirror raised its needle. With a slow, deliberate movement, it drove the iron point straight through the glass of the copper mirror. The glass didn't shatter. It parted like liquid flesh, allowing the rusted needle to slide into my reality. The cold iron touched my left cheek. The pain returned, but it wasn't chemical anymore. It was physical, raw, and agonizingly slow. I felt the needle pierce through the skin of my jawline, dragging the coarse black thread through my flesh. The entity wasn't trying to kill me. It was anchoring me. Please. I tried to sob, the word dying in my throat as a wet bubble of blood. The creature's jawless face split open horizontally, revealing a deep crimson throat filled with rows of vibrating silver needles. It let out a sound, a low rhythmic hum that vibrated the very bones in my face, matching the frequency of the room. It pulled the thread taut. My head was jerked violently forward, my face slamming against the cold surface of the copper mirror. The metal was freezing, burning my skin with an icy intensity. Through the glass, I could see the entity's face inches from mine, its metallic fingers moving with the precise, practiced speed of an expert seamstress. It drove the needle through my lower lip, stitching it firmly to the upper muscle of my gum line. I felt my flesh tearing, the copper taste of my own blood flooding my mouth, choking me. The ritual wasn't an invocation of a ghost. It was an invitation for a cosmic vivisection. By applying the silver nitrate, I hadn't just looked through the window. I had broken the seal that kept my physical body distinct from the horrific world behind the glass. The tailor reached for my left eye. The surgical steel instrument growing from its index finger elongated, the tip sharpening into a microfine scalpel blade. It slipped the blade beneath my upper eyelid. It didn't blind me. That was the deepest horror of it. It didn't destroy the nerve. It carefully, surgically sliced away the eyelids entirely, peeling the protective skin back and pinning it to my brow with small bone splinters. It wanted the window permanently open. It wanted me to see every single detail of what it was going to do next. It reached through the mirror with both hands, its steel fingers sinking deep into the meat of my shoulders. It began to pull. It wasn't pulling my body into the mirror. It was peeling my skin off my frame, pulling the physical veil of my human appearance through the glass like a wet, discarded coat. The pain transcended anything human. It was a whiteout of agony, a state of being where my consciousness was reduced to a single, screaming nerve ending. I watched my own outer layers being folded over the entity's arm, a wet, bloody uniform of human flesh. And then, the silver nitrate began to wear off. I collapsed onto the floor. The darkness vanished. The harsh, white fluorescent light of the bathroom flickered back to life above me. The walls were drywall again. The sink was porcelain. And the mirror was just glass. I lay on the cold tile, gasping for air, my body shaking so violently my teeth rattled. I reached up with trembling fingers to touch my face, expecting to find a raw, flayed mass of muscle and missing eyelids. But my skin was intact. My eyelids were there. There was no blood, no thread, no iron needles. I dragged myself up to the sink, sobbing with relief, and looked into the mirror. I looked completely normal. My eyes were bloodshot from the chemical irritation, but the skin was whole. The ritual had ended. I had returned to the safe, filtered world of human perception. I thought it was over. I thought the ledger was just a psychological trap that induced a horrific, hallucinatory waking dream. I turned off the bathroom light, walked into my bedroom, and crawled into bed. I pulled the blankets up to my chin, staring at the dark ceiling, waiting for the adrenaline to leave my system so I could sleep. That's when I felt it. I tried to swallow, but my jaw wouldn't open. I reached up to my mouth in the dark. I ran my fingers over my lips. They felt smooth, unbroken. But when I pushed my finger inside my mouth, past my teeth, my nail caught on something hard, something coarse. Deep inside my mouth, rooted in the raw muscle of my throat, was a thick, black cord. I pulled on it. A sharp, lightning bolt of pure agony shot straight down into my chest. The thread didn't stop in my throat. It went deeper, stitched directly into my lungs, my stomach, and my heart. The tailor hadn't stopped. The ritual hadn't ended when the lights came back on. Every single day since that night, I can feel the thread tightening. Every time I take a deep breath, the cord pulls taut against my internal organs, dragging them a fraction of an inch closer to the glass. When I look into the mirror now, my skin looks normal to everyone else, but I can see the microscopic black stitches hiding just beneath the surface of my pores, holding my face together like a loose mask. I didn't escape the unseen world. I'm still sitting on that bathroom counter, pinned to the copper frame, while something with steel fingers slowly, meticulously winds the spool. And sometimes at night, when the room is completely silent, I don't hear my pulse in my ears. I hear the needle. Be careful what you look for in the dark. Some windows can never be shut again. That is all for tonight's episode. As always, I do appreciate you joining me and hope you have enjoyed the stories that I have produced for you. If you have any story suggestions, please reach out to me at nightmarepod@gmail.com. And don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, please rate and review our show. Your ratings help our show get out there to other listeners, and I do appreciate it. So until next time, sleep well.